All right, so hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Journey to Healthcare series. And this is episode, we had so many, I lost count of how many we have right now. But today we have a very interesting topic, which is going to be all about forensics. And our guest for today, we have Julia Kochanowski here with us today. So would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so as you said, my name's Julia. I have my Bachelor of Science in Biology and in Forensic Science, and then I have a minor in Criminal Justice. I've been working as an autopsy technician here for almost 3 years now, about a little over 2.5, I would say. And I'm going to be starting my master's in the fall in clinical and translational sciences with a focus in pathogenesis of human disease. And then I'll be applying to medical school from there.
Yeah, that sounds like quite a lot. So
Yeah.
would you like to tell us about what your day-to-day basis like as a
Yeah,
yeah.
so day to day for me, when I get to work, I will, check in with the doctors, see if there's any cases. They'll usually give me a folder if there is one, and it has all the information in there about the case. And so I can go into the back and I'll get everything set up. And then I'm able to pull them out of the freezer or the cooler, I should say. I don't know why I said freezer. But we'll take them out and then I can weigh them and we'll get some pictures because we always have to take pictures like as they come in right away. And then once we start to open the body bag, we can do like a height as well. I'll inventory all of their items that they have, their personal belongings, and make sure that they're put away. So that way that can be sent to the funeral home with them. And then we'll clean them up if they need to be cleaned. So that way we can get better pictures as well. Sometimes I'll do x-rays if we need to. A lot of the times that's for like gunshot wounds or anything like that, or maybe for identification purposes. And then we'll be able to get started at about that point. We'll do some toxicology. So we'll draw like blood. We usually take it from the femoral vein, which is down kind of by your inner thigh, I would say. And then we'll do urine once we open them. And then we also get vitreous, which is this kind of like, it's a very watery substance that's in your eye in the center. It kind of holds the shape of the eye. And so we'll draw that as well. And then we're able to start the autopsy. And so I'm the one who really does the whole thing. And so when I remove the organs, I will then hand them off to the doctor, who then is able to take it and they'll cut into it, look at it closer, take any measurements or extra photos that they need. And then they'll take a section and put in a cassette, and these cassettes are saved. And then they'll also take stock. So any sections of organs that they think they might need, they'll save those as well. And so we'll finish doing that with the autopsy and we'll be able to close them up and then send them back on their way to the funeral home. And then it's my job to then clean everything afterwards and make sure that the stock and cassette jars go where they need to and that the doctor has all the toxicology that they need. So we're set. And so cases range in how long they take. For us, we're tied to a medical school, so it usually takes us a lot longer. From when we take them out of the cooler, it can take like 3 hours to do one case, I would say. But the longest case I've ever done was 8 hours.
Oh
So
wow.
it just, yeah, it depends
Long.
on what it is and what's going on. If we need to collect evidence at all, we can do that too, and that can take a long time. Or if someone has a lot of injuries, that can also take a lot of time, or if they're wearing a lot of clothes. Where I am, it's very, very cold. So in the winter, people typically are wearing many layers and that takes a while to get them all off. But after cleaning, that's about it. It's like we check around to make sure there's nothing extra we have to do, any organization or anything like that. And then we kind of, whoever wants to leave can leave at that point. Usually I'll stay for a bit and work on some other stuff because I also am writing a case study with the doctors there. And so sometimes I'll work on that there to get some of that done so I don't have to worry about it at home. That's typically what my day looks like, just assisting the doctor right now.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's like a long process, and I'm wondering, does this process always applies like you do the full thing for every single case, or does it depend on the like?
It definitely depends. Usually for a majority of our cases, we will do the same exact thing for every single case. Families can request a private autopsy, and while doing that, they can give permission to do certain things, like they can sign if they want us to go until we find cause of death, or they can sign for us to just do head, or we can just do an external examination, basically just looking at them around to make sure, everything looks like it should be, I guess, nothing suspicious. We typically do those very rarely, I would say, at least for our office. I can't speak for every single one. We did an external only just the other day. Usually too, if they come from the hospital or something like that, where they kind of have a whole list of different illnesses and diseases, different things that could really have caused it, then we'll usually kind of push for an external only or maybe just a head only, because we also want to be respectful of the families, and not every family wants a full autopsy to be done, and so we try to work with that, especially if there's like religious reasons that they don't want it to be done. So we try to make sure that we do what we can that's best for them and always put, the person first. So more often than not, I think usually families kind of want us to do the whole thing. If they're requesting a private case too, a lot of the times it's for genetic reasons. They want to know, if their father passed away from some type of cancer, is it genetic? And we can test for that when we do toxicology. And so we can let them know, and then, maybe they can go in for extra testing and that can help them. And so we do a lot of that as well.
Yeah. All right. So in order for someone to pursue this career path, what is like, how do they get there?
So to be an autopsy technician, it depends on where you are. So in the United States, it goes state by state. Where I am, you just had to be 18 years old. And that was pretty much it. They do have a preference towards people who want to pursue forensic pathology. So they like to hire students. And that was kind of their focus for that. Whereas like in other bigger states, I think like in California, because it is so competitive to get in, they'll require you to have so many years of experience already with bodies, or to have like your bachelor's in something, or some states might ask you to even have a master's just because you need to get yourself up there. But I find more so in coroner states, those are usually the ones with the least requirements, whereas medical examiner states are higher up there.
Yeah, interesting that there's like this variation.
Yeah, it's very different, but to be a forensic pathologist, you would have to go all the way through medical school and do a residency and a fellowship to get there.
Yeah. So, why did you choose this field? I mean, it sounds really interesting, really fun. Like right now, I'm like, well, that might be pathology for me, though I don't think so.
Right.
But yeah. So, why did you choose this career?
My path has jumped around a lot. So from when I was in like second grade up until I think I was like a senior in high school, I wanted to be a marine biologist. Like I was dead set on it for the longest time, and that's what I was like set on doing. And then my senior year of high school, I took a criminalistics class, is what they called it. And so I kind of got a little taste of like all these different parts of forensics. And I just really enjoyed it. And I thought it was so interesting. And then I always had these like this interest and love for crime shows. I thought it was interesting to see what they did. I really enjoyed seeing the science behind it, how they developed it, like what they do. And so eventually I decided, I want to go to school for forensics. And I was looking into forensic anthropology first, and I got to work with a really great forensic anthropologist for a while. But she ended up leaving and moving to a different state to go somewhere else. And so for a bit, I was kind of stuck and I didn't know what to do, because I felt like, my good opportunity to learn about this is kind of gone. And I ended up finding out that there were a few forensic pathologists who worked at the medical school. And so I reached out to them to talk to them about it. And one of them met up with me and one of my friends too, for coffee. And he just kind of explained the job. And the way he was talking about it really inspired me to try that route instead, because it sounded way more interesting. Because a lot of forensic anthropologists, or just anthropologists in general, they will work in museums. Like, many of them don't typically get employed by the FBI because there's not so many positions available. And it's more like contract work where you get called in versus having a steady case flow. And so that wasn't something that I really wanted. I wanted to be able to have something kind of steady that I was constantly doing. And then too, I like the idea of having job stability in that sense, because with pathology, not many people want to do it. And so when you go to medical school, they always said that like the biggest and the hardest part was getting in. And once you're in, if you're really dead set on pathology, like obviously you want to do well, but it's not going to be as competitive as some of the other specialties that are out there. And many, for like residency, many of the slots don't fill. They said maybe half of them will fill. And so if you decide you want to go somewhere else, you can trade your spot right away or go wherever you feel like going. And then you just keep going from there. And pathology is just really interesting to me. My love for it has really grown a lot since I've been working with them. And it's one of the like very few areas where you kind of have to know everything. Like in forensic pathology, you don't get to focus on just, you know, the kidneys or just the brain. You have to have like a general knowledge of all these things and how it works to be able to provide these diagnoses. Occasionally we will send something out, like if we need histology done for the brain, they'll sometimes send it out to a neuropathologist, and they'll be able to look at it and send us back the results. And then we'll also look at it to make sure that we agree or like it makes sense. But yeah, that's what I found interesting. And you can physically see what's going on. Like you can't just open up a living person to see what's ailing them. So that doesn't really help you. And it's kind of the way one of the doctors I worked with described it to me is that medicine's really an art. It's an art form because it's not, well, it uses science. You can't really, in many cases, definitively say this is what's happening because you can't see it with your own eyes. And so it's just a bunch of tests and tests and tests that eventually can get you to an answer that will be right. But it's definitely an art form, whereas pathology, you can see that most of the time. There are some times where we just don't know and we have to say undetermined for the manner of death, but I just really enjoy kind of the mystery behind it and being able to solve those things.
I mean, it's great. I mean, at the end, when you want to decide on which career path you want to take, you want something that you're excited to go to work every single day. So
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it's like while the job is hard, you see a lot of really bad things sometimes. I love the people that I work with, and I love being able to do what I do. And even last night, I had a horrible night and I couldn't sleep and I was just really annoyed. And when I went to work today, I had a great time with my coworkers, and just being able to do all the things that I do just made me feel so much better. And that helped. And that's how I kind of know that I'm in the right area for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And speaking of when you started talking about crime shows and all that, I'm curious if like the stereotypes what you see in films, are they the same thing, or are there differences?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
differences.
because I'm curious about that, because you're like, I'm like, is that really what happens in real life? I was
Right.
curious.
They definitely kind of cram a lot of things together because obviously they only have so long to do it. And that does lead to a lot of like misconceptions about forensics. And, you know, things take a long time in forensics. Our autopsy reports can take up to 6 weeks to get back. Or to get DNA, the actual process of getting it is like less than a week, but because of the backlog in the system where we have to send it all this, it can take up to a year to get DNA results back. Our toxicology can take 6 weeks to come back. That's why we hold our reports off that long. And every office is different. Some places have it in their building. Other places like us, we have to send it out to a different state. And so it takes longer. And so that's one of the bigger things too. And then in forensics, you kind of have a very niche area that you're in. It's not broad like an NCIS, Abby. She does everything in the lab. She leads the lab. Whereas in reality, if you're a forensic toxicologist, you might be focusing on alcohol, or you might be focusing on like a certain drug or different things like that that you're just really good at. Or ballistics, you'll be specifically for that, or different areas. So you're not really doing everything. It's very much so a team effort. In movies and shows, they kind of show, you know, forensics or forensic pathologists, especially, is like this kind of dark, weird person that hides in the corners, when that's not really the case. Out of all medical specialties, I think forensic pathologists get the most interaction out of anyone because we see, you know, attorneys, we talk to police officers, the FBI, fire chiefs, like all these different people, and even our coworkers, we have to work with them. And in forensics in general, you have a whole team that you have to work with to get to these different answers. And so that's one of the biggest things. People are always like, I want to be like Bones because I want to do this kind of lab work and I want to go into the field and I want to do this. And I'm like, unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
They have to make it exciting and like busy to keep your attention, but forensics is very exciting in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with like any form of like this type of medical dramas. Like you have one doctor who does like 5 specialities at once, and like there's no communication with the nurses and the, like, for example, speech therapists and all that. Just one doctor who's like the king.
Yeah.
Like that's not real life, is it?
I saw someone make a video the other day saying, like, if you're waiting for your Dr. House, it's not going to happen because Dr. House doesn't do everything, and he probably would have been fired a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable about that, yeah. So you touched on like a lot of the positives about the field. Is there something that perhaps is like one of your least favorite things about forensics?
Yeah, definitely the emotional toll it can take on you. It is a lot, and so you have to be really good about how you handle it and your self-care and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. That's also why I like having such a good relationship with my coworkers, because when we see something that's really bad, we can talk to each other about it or be there for each other. Like if there's a case that I just absolutely cannot do, one of my other coworkers can step in and do it, or we can pass it off, stuff like that. And so that's definitely something that people have to be prepared for, because you'll see a lot of very, very messed up things. I've seen a lot of really horrible things. I've never necessarily like really lost it. Like I am really good about separating these things to keep my own sanity, but there's been one case where I came home and I was just a mess for a good day or so because it was just so bad. And so it's very important to keep on top of that. And while it is hard, it's important to remember that it is science, it's medicine. What we're doing is helping these families. And it's a very important job that a lot of people think is weird. A lot of people don't like it. They think you're going to be creepy and strange, when it's very important and someone needs to do it. So if someone can handle it and they kind of enjoy it, then it's a good idea to at least try. My mentor, she always says, like, you know, you need to leave the field when you stop being bothered by these things. So if you become desensitized or anything, that's when you've seen too much and you need to leave, because you should never, ever lose your sympathy or your empathy for any of these people. You should always have these cases bother you because what's happening is wrong no matter what. And I think it's a good point because she's bounced all over the place. Like for a while, she stopped doing forensics and she just did hospital autopsies, or she just started teaching for a while and then she went back to it. And so that's important to know your limits too, and know that with forensic pathology, you can kind of branch out like that, where you can just go also do hospital work and do autopsies there. You can teach for a while if you just want to teach at a medical school or just do research, things like that. And so I appreciate having that kind of broad spectrum of things if I do get worn out.
Yeah, I think that's like a very good thing, because it's not nice to always be fit in the box. So you have variety in moving, and I think like even despite the challenges and all that, I think like if you find an answer like for one family and then just feel, I feel like that is a very rewarding thing, especially when you really want to know something. So yeah, I think that's really
It
special.
is nice because we are their advocates. We are the advocates for the victims and their families, whether it be from a homicide or even from a hospital. If they have some kind of malpractice issue or they mess something up, we're their advocates, and we need to make sure that we're there for them and that we're not holding biases or trying to sway things in one direction. And we had a case recently too where the doctor even called the attorneys and fought them on it because he's like, I'm going to look at this case right now and I can tell you that this is the situation. There's no reason to charge anyone with anything. And if you do, I'm just letting you know I'm writing this report in full support of this other person because there's no reason for you to be doing this right now. And it's ridiculous. And so I like being able to see that because it reminds me that, you know, there are people who will vouch for you. And especially in forensics, I think it kind of has a bad name still lingering right now because there is bad forensics. There is bad people in forensics who have hidden evidence, destroyed evidence, done terrible things. But I think it's getting better. I really think that there's hope for it to get better, and that with science advancing and how it's working right now, that it will get to a point where we can figure things out and we can determine whether some method is unreliable or not and how to use it.
Yeah, exactly. And like as in any field, right, there's always the good and the bad. So that's
Yeah.
also dependent. But yeah. So if for all the aspiring forensic pathologists want to become one or want to take a similar career, like what advice would you like to give to them?
Be prepared because it's going to be a long path. You'll be in school for a while. Depending on how old they are, if they are listening to this when they're in high school, get started on medical stuff right away, or your medical prereqs right away in college. Start volunteering, look into clubs, do all those things so it's not as like packed into your last few years as it was for me because I decided last minute. And really find a way to ensure your commitment. If you can, reach out to like your local ME and see if they'll let you in for even a tour and you can talk to them and meet them. Or if you're in a state where you can get a job there, try to do that too, so you can get some kind of experience. Because with forensic pathology, you really don't get experience doing the forensic side of it until your fellowship. And I think that's what scared me, is because like I didn't want to go through all this schooling just to find out that I couldn't handle it or that it was going to make me sick every time I went in there. And so I always tell people to reach out and send an email and just, you know, put in a nice cover letter of why, like a letter of interest, why you want to go in, what, like why you want to do this, what you want to learn, and maybe a CV if you're trying to look for a job, something professional. And just be kind about it. If they don't respond, they're very busy. So don't lose hope. Maybe it just got lost in their email, but definitely try to get some experience. And then even in medical school, for anyone who even doesn't want to do forensics, I very, very highly recommend going to watch an autopsy and viewing it, because you will learn so much more that way than anatomy lab.
Yeah,
It looks vastly different. The way the bodies are, fresh bodies compared to embalmed ones, are very, very different. They look different, the colors and the smells and everything. And I think that'll prepare people more. And we often have medical students who come in and view, and I love working with them because I teach them all the things that I know, and then they'll sometimes teach me things that I don't know. And it's interesting to see them work together, and they're surprised when they see how different it is.
yeah.
And they're excited to have that opportunity. And then while it can be hard, and you'll see some hard things if you decide to maybe go in, view an autopsy, it kind of will prepare you, because in every field of medicine, there are going to be really hard and devastating things that you'll have to look out for. And so you'll kind of get that little, this is what that's like. You'll get a realization from it. And I remember, because I was going to apply for med school this past year to go in the fall. And one of my letter recommendation people, they wrote in there about how, since I've been working this job and some of the things that I've been through personally has prepared me for such a difficult path, because medical school is hard and it's traumatizing. And he's like, she's already seen all this stuff. So when it comes to death in medical school, and when you have to learn about that and how to handle it, she already knows. Like, she can handle this stuff and it won't be as detrimental. Like, we know how to handle ourselves when it comes to self-care. And so that's something I suggest, is it's a good idea all around. Obviously, no one has to absolutely enjoy it. They can hate it. Dr. Rowe, one of the doctors I work with, she told me a story about someone she knew wrote their personal statement about how they went to view an autopsy and they thought it was the most disgusting thing ever, and that they had to leave to throw up, and they came back and they finished the whole thing and they got into med school with that personal statement. And she said it was one of the funniest things she's ever read, and she said that he even still recommended, like, go. It's good to see and good to get that experience, because that's kind of how we do a lot of research in medicine. Like, that's how it is. That's how we learn a lot. That's how we see the effects of different things and treatments, is through autopsies. It's a big research area. And so kind of seeing where it begins and how it works is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said is right. And also, like, about reaching out to people, I'm sure many people, they'll get excited, like when you show their an interest in the field, they will get excited, like, from their side.
Yeah.
So don't get intimidated, because sometimes you do feel a bit intimidated, but just don't.
Oh yeah, I'm always scared to write an email sometimes, and I just get terrified. But then I realize, you know, they were in your shoes once too, and they probably felt the same way writing emails, so they understand. And most people always appreciate it. Address them correctly, make sure you know who they are, and then they'll really appreciate you reaching out if they can get back to you.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed talking with you. I've learned a lot. I mean, to be honest, I don't have any exposure to the field, so thanks to you, I know how the system works. Like 8 hours, that was crazy.
Yeah,
that was crazy. I to be fair, like, I thought like 4 hours max, but yeah, that's like double.
Yeah, it depends. And then it depends on the doctor too. Sometimes they like to do extra things, but other doctors don't. And it can vary based on that. And so it's always different.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being part of this series. I really enjoyed having you here, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, take care.
You too.